once you grow a crop, you've invested a lot of money, a big carbon footprint, and if you then lose that to insects, pests and weeds, you've actually lost money you've already invested. So it's really important to preserve yields, that we get crop protection right alongside improving yield itself. Most crop protection products are delivered by companies, but we can help them to make sure they are getting the best kind of crop protection that can go on. And that's really the remit of Rothamsted generally, and my department in particular. So the most recent publication from my group is around the use of neonicotinoids and how they might damage bees. So we've looked at 2 different neonicotinoids. This is work done with partners in Exeter and with Bayer. One which has been shown to be very toxic previously, and indeed we found that, but the other is very non-toxic to bees. So the 2 compounds, although they're both called neonicotinoids, actually have very different effects on bees, because one can be metabolized and the other one can't. The risk of using a chemical isn't just inherent to the chemical, it's how you use it. It's the actual risk out in the field rather than the inherent toxicity or hazard of a compound. So we should be looking at risk and not hazard. And we need to go forward and make more and more selective chemistry, hopefully so we can target one insect. And the more we understand about how insects metabolize the chemistry, the more we can do that, or we can work towards doing that. Understanding exactly how chemicals work, how they interact with the insect, how the insect can metabolize it, means that we can work more and more towards designing very specific chemistry, hopefully in the long term, to just target the one pest you're trying to target and not have any side effects. That's the very long-term aim. And that chemistry will have to be used very carefully to avoid resistance build-up, which is another issue for all of the chemicals on the market. And it will have to be integrated with alternatives to chemistry. So we need to look at a much wider picture for crop protection, where we use all the possible tools in the box to best protect things and safely to protect things. I think you've got to remember that most of the countryside that people see when they drive around is an arable countryside here, or it's farm animals, or it's farming. It isn't natural wild, especially in the UK. And I think hopefully going forward, we will find ways to make the 2 compatible with each other. But it is a challenge, and what we don't know is how things might, if climate change brings in a new pathogen or a new pest, or we could see which crops we grow changing quite widely, and that would affect how yields are, how we have to import some food if one crop became unviable. It's really hard. And I think that's the problem farmers have, is really seeing that long-term future. With a combination of climate change, legislation, politics, public opinion, these are all part of this argument. It isn't just the underpinning science. And as scientists, we often don't think of that, but I think we do need to start seeing it as that bigger picture. We need to be able to do more experimental work to test models, and we're doing some of that with insects, for instance, by having population cages where we put insects in with known mutations, so we can genetically engineer insects to be resistant to insecticides, and we can test whether those mutations will or won't spread through populations before we see what actually happens in the field. So prediction and modelling is a very important component of this. And we hope that in 10 years' time we'll be much better at that. I sense personally a move a bit away from this fear of GM, which has taken hold. I sense people being more willing to look at these alternatives. I think as scientists we have to be very open and honest about what we can and can't do, and we have to make sure we explain what the real risks might be. Very few in my personal view. And I think we will see that gradually happening in many countries. Maybe some will be ahead of others, but that will push it, because if you're using GM in one country and importing food around, everyone's using that food. I think that will happen. That's my prediction.